And good morning, Pastor Jacobson here with another devotion for your day. It is a beautiful day out there. Already been out and about a little bit this morning, getting in the garden, looking around, seeing how things are doing, and it was just absolutely wonderful outside. Today, we're going to do something a little different than we have been doing with the Proverbs. We're actually going to more or less take an entire chapter, maybe not explicitly talking about every verse, but just kind of taking it in as a whole, because chapter 17 is one of my favorites as far as just some good old-fashioned advice and wisdom for our day and age. So that's what we're going to be doing today. We're going to take chapter 17. You'll probably get my pithy aside comments as we go through, as usual, and take some time to dive right into that. So without further ado, go ahead, grab your favorite beverage and Bible, and let's go ahead and get started. All right, Proverbs 17 here. We are going to start at verse 1. It says, "Better is a dry morsel with quiet than a house full of feasting with strife." This becomes apparent to so many people each and every time we have major holiday gatherings of family. A lot of times it's good and we like it and it's good to have family around, but there are some people for whatever reason, sins that have happened against them or the like, that getting together for feasting is not necessarily the most peaceful of things, right? Just some of that wisdom, and yet we keep doing it time and time again, right? Something to think about here. Verse 2, "A servant who deals wisely will rule over a son who acts shamefully, and will share the inheritance as one of the brothers." Now, this happens not just in our movies, where we see, kind of rags to riches stories and the like, but we actually see this happen in real life. That's the reason we have movies about it, the foolish son will squander all the wealth, and it will look like the business or something goes to an honored employee or servant or somebody else. This happens in movies like comedies, whether it's kind of the off-color raunchy Billy Madison or anything else. We kind of see this play out. Why is that? I think part of it is, although we have flesh and blood relationships, we do not inherit, that's not the right word. We do bring into our family people who are not necessarily our flesh and blood, good friends, good workers, companions in our life. And sometimes they actually take the place of maybe foolish sons or daughters, right? It happens. Not that it necessarily should, but there is a wisdom to this, that sometimes people start to realize our families change over time, okay? Oh, all of a sudden, all the comments came in at once. That was strange. I'm sorry, guys. Good morning, Arliss. Good morning, Connie. Good morning, Vicky and Joanne. Good morning, Shirley. It's good to see you. I don't know why they all came in at once, but that was a little strange. Hey, glitches happen, right? All right, let's keep going. "The crucible is for silver, and the furnace is for gold, and the Lord tests hearts." This is a theme throughout the Bible, and we'll be talking about it in future sermons, I know, that there is a concept where God does test. And the way that it's usually spoken about is in this language of a crucible, high heat, furnace, to get the dross off. And that's not necessarily comfortable. Not only is heat not very comfortable for any of you who have been down in the deep south, especially during the middle of summer with the humidity and everything, it is also just not comfortable to have to go through some of the trials that God puts us in. Now, why does he do it, though, is to refine. We're going to talk a little bit about that in our sermon this Sunday, where we talk from 2 Corinthians chapter 4 and just a touch into chapter 5 about having treasures in jars of clay. So that will be our topic for this Sunday. We'll talk more about that later. Just kind of keep that in mind, that we know that good things, silver, gold, or at least what we claim to be good, we like money and stuff like that, some needs to go through a process to get what we ultimately want. Do we always apply that lesson throughout our life consistently, though? Again, that'll be part of our sermon. Let's go verse 4. An evildoer listens to wicked lips, and a liar gives ear to mischievous tongue. Interesting, and we do see this, that people who are maybe turned more towards, maybe have a proclivity towards evil or wickedness or lying or slander, will somehow attract like, right? They surround themselves with same people. I think maybe the real life example where we see this, and sometimes it maybe comes out more in our shows and movies and stuff, it's like the town gossip, right? So it's like, you watch the Andy Griffith show. I know, throwing way back, right? But you watch some of these shows and you had that town gossip, and sometimes it's a comical thing that this person keeps going and gets more information from other people who are just like them, and it blows out of proportion, right? And then usually it's comedic end and those type of things. Not always. But again, it's just kind of this worldly wisdom that we know. So if we find ourselves in kind of evil scenarios or mischievous ways, or if we kind of like to, get at people and stuff, realize that we're probably going to be subjecting ourselves to more people who are like that. Is that really what we want? Hey, good morning, Wanda. Good morning, Mom. Good to see you all. Let's keep going on down. Whoever mocks the poor insults his maker. He who is glad at calamity will not go unpunished. I like this one, especially for our cultural climate today. We do a lot of talking about helping the poor or doing different things for the poor. But I think one of the things that we need to start doing before we even get to that part of the conversation, I think what we kind of do is kind of rush to throw, usually in our country, it's throw money at a problem that we see, right? I think it is first and foremost the best thing to look at every human as created by God. Now, this, of course, in our country does have a little bit of an issue because that's going to assume creationism. It's going to assume that there is a higher power. But I think when we start there, that everybody is created by God, we have to get to step 2, that everybody's also fallen and sinful. But let's start with step 1. Then the rest of the conversation that everybody's kind of yelling, screaming about right now with equality versus equity and racism and all these type of things, those things kind of have to peter out. Because then you have to get to step 2. If we start with everyone's created by God, thus equal in that sense, as being part of the creation, and then everybody's fallen, then we can kind of further the discussion maybe more in the right direction. We're always kind of skewed in the wrong direction in our sinful flesh, but I think it helps us orient in the proper way. Let's keep on going down. Grandchildren are the crown of the aged, and the glory of children is their fathers. It's interesting here. So the fathers actually kind of miss a step here. We talk about grandchildren, and then what would be great-grandchildren. How oftentimes do I go on visits to meet different people? And usually if they have grandkids, the first thing I'm going to hear about is the grandkids. There is something about that. And of course we're proud of our own children, but there's something about seeing another generation come to fruition that's deeply part of our human experience, where we kind of see the manifestation of ourself being passed on, maybe kind of put in psychological terms for us. So yeah, it's true. It plays true all over. Or how many times do you, maybe you've done this in your life if you have grandkids now, how many times do you say, well, mom and dad spoil my kids more than they ever spoiled me, right? There's something different about that relationship. Maybe it's because, well, I think it is. We've grown in wisdom through the years. We've parented, we've gotten through the stage, and now we get to kind of go back, not to correct the mistakes that we made, but we get to relive a little bit because we get to send them off home back to mom and dad later, right? That's the idea. But there's something about that. And the glory of children, so this would be the grandchildren, is their fathers. So this is also true, and you'll hear me preach on this in particular when we get to Jesus talking about let the little children come to me. When Jesus says you must become like a child, that doesn't mean that you have to turn your mind to mush, right? Like a child. No, what do children do? Children watch their parents in particular. They watch other people too, but really their parents in particular watch an infant. They're always looking for mom, right? To mimic. This is why, and I mentioned this a lot, this is kind of my main lesson on this is, my kids, they still do it because they're goofballs, but they will put on dad's shoes and kind of stomp around the house a little bit. Well, what's behind that? They think it's kind of funny because they look like clown shoes on little feet. But there's also something about, and by the way, I kind of started realizing this as well. The shoes my kids always choose to wear are my work shoes. It's not my sandals or anything like that, or my running shoes or anything like that. They're always putting on my black leather shoes and stomping around. There's something about growing up in our fathers' or mothers' shoes, professional shoes in some sense. Fine speech is not becoming to a fool, still less is false speech to a prince. A bribe is like a magic stone in the eyes of the one who gives it. Wherever he turns, he prospers. This, I think, is kind of tongue-in-cheek as a proverb. The man who gives a bribe. It's obviously not a good thing. That's what I'm trying to say. But the person who gives it, who's starting to maybe be able to call in some favors, that's the idea. In other words, don't fall into bribes. That's really the lesson. Whoever covers an offense seeks love, but he who repeats a matter separates close friends. Man, I see this a lot in our world today. The more we seek to cover over someone, and I'm not saying that we have to be a carpet for everybody to walk on, right? But if we really want peace, usually the thing that does not bring peace, and usually the thing that does not make for a better environment for you, is to go get everybody you possibly can and blab everybody's sins and demand justice. Usually this incites more anger and a lot of people, and it incites on both sides. You'll get people behind you. Oh yeah, that's right. You're right. You're also going to get people who are very diametrically opposed to you. It usually blows up in your face. We definitely see this going on in our world right now. We see it with rioting and protesting and the like. You see both sides happening. It polarizes people. You see this in the church. Somebody starts getting really upset. Maybe it's at what pastor has done. Maybe it's at what an elder or a chairman has done. Doesn't matter. And we think we're gonna get right. We're gonna get what's ours, and then doesn't work out very well for us, does it? That's something to think about. But the one who wants to show love, and how do we show love? We should. We're Christians, right? I know we don't always. We do fall. A lot of times it's covering over. It's showing mercy when it's within our power to strike and lash out, right? Charlie, my greatest blessings call me grandpa. See, there you go. The truth. It comes out, right? It is so true. Every time I go, without fail. Now let's see, it'll be this month. I can't remember. I think it's June 24th. I'll be 8 years in the ministry. And every single time I go to somebody or talk with somebody who has grandkids, you know what the number one thing we're going to be talking about is grandkids, which is fine. Absolutely. But it's part of our human nature. It just is. All right, keep going on down. A rebuke goes deeper into a man of understanding than 100 blows into a fool. This really connects back to the last one. If you have somebody of understanding, having an actual honest conversation with them, which can be in a form of a rebuke, as long as it's a critical rebuke that's seeking to restore, will go much deeper than just lashing out. And if a person is foolish and is not going to learn from their mistakes, you can lash out as much as you want. Guess what you're doing? You're just lashing yourself, right? So again, I use this kind of little proverb I've made up, or I didn't make it up, I read it somewhere, that, you know, anger is the poison we take hoping the other person will die. If you have somebody who's foolish, who's not going to change over on the other side of the equation, why you keep lashing out at that person? They ain't going to change, right? Keep going on down. An evil man seeks only rebellion, and a cruel messenger will be sent against him. Let a man meet a she-bear robbed of her cubs rather than a fool in his folly. Oh boy. If anyone returns evil for good, evil will not depart from his house. Interesting idea. The more that we get into evil, and I've used this metaphor before, is you touch evil, evil things happen, right? You invite evil into your life, guess what's going to happen? We know this. We talk about it in different ways. The one that comes to mind is with somebody who lies, they dig the hole deeper, right? We understand that the more you keep doing that thing over there, the worse everything else back here comes. Well, guess what? If we keep doing that in our life, what do we really expect to come back in our house? Maybe literally our homes with our children and spouse, but it could also just be in our life in general, right? The beginning of strife is like letting out water, so quit before the quarrel breaks out. I'm going to read that one again. The beginning of strife is like letting out water, so quit before the quarrel breaks out. As we oftentimes hear, and it is said, quit while you're ahead, right? If you want to build up strife, it will come. And man, you can see feuds that go on for generations sometimes, especially in smaller communities where it's harder for people to get away from each other. I've heard before, or you've probably heard, this family does not talk to this family. And that might have been that way for 2 generations now. Who knows? And you're probably thinking of someone by now. Yeah. So quit before it breaks out, right? So stop while you're ahead. We probably need to have that like imprinted onto our skin. We probably need to tattoo that on ourselves just to remember. He who justifies the wicked and he who condemns the righteous are both alike an abomination to the Lord. Why should a fool have money in his hand to buy wisdom when he has no sense? This is an interesting one. And so this was this morning when I was preparing for the devotions and reading through. This kind of reminds me a little bit of what we do today. So, and right, wrong, indifferent, that doesn't really matter. But we talk about this real big push towards higher education. Everybody's got to go to college, whether they really should or should not. Whether they really would be happy doing that, or if they would really be happy starting their life out. Some people are really ready for that. And maybe this verse can help us think about this. Why should we give money to buy wisdom? Or maybe in the idea of higher education, why do we want to spend money to buy wisdom or education when it's not really what the child really wants, right? Who knows? Something to think about. A friend loves at all time, and a brother is born for adversity. Just a quick comment as we go through Memorial Day. We talk about brothers in arms. A brother is born for adversity. One who lacks sense gives a pledge and puts up security in the presence of his neighbor. Whoever loves transgressions loves strife. He who makes his door high seeks destruction. Making your door high, big house, idea up on a hill. That's the idea. A man of crooked heart does not discover good, and one with a dishonest tongue falls into calamity. Again, something we should know that happens, and yet we kind of fall into those traps every now and then. He who sires a fool gets himself sorrow, and the father of a fool has no joy. We've seen this happen in life. I know we have. It's unfortunate. This is why we have to remember the idea of prescription versus proscription. The Proverbs, I keep wanting to say Psalms, the other book of the Bible. The Proverbs are not a prescription that if I do 1 + 1, I always get 2, right? Sometimes you get 4, and you're like, how did that happen? Well, because other outside influences are working, not just what you're doing, right? So you might be adding 1 + 1, but in this instance, your kid might be adding 3 to the equation. Why? Doesn't know, but they're doing it, right? You're doing your end, they're doing their end, and out comes a different equation. So yes, there is a proscription, generally speaking. If we do certain things well, good things will happen. So this is why I always caution about the use of the verse, teach a child in the way they should go, and when they grow older, they will not depart from it. Again, proscriptive. Generally speaking, you do your part, you teach your children. They should go the way they should, that they've been taught. Should. But you also have to remember other things get added to that equation that sometimes are in our control, sometimes not. Sometimes we don't even see them coming, right? So just to put that there. So we've seen this happen, maybe in friends' lives, maybe in our own life, where for whatever reason, a child kind of turns out foolish in the sense of the scriptures, that is not receiving wisdom, especially biblical wisdom, and it becomes a sore sticking point in our life. It does happen. Keep going. Where did I leave off? There. 22. A joyful heart is good medicine, but a crushed spirit dries up the bones. You read the life of Martin Luther, for example. He was a rather melancholic person in his life. There's lots of reasons that go into that. Lots of people have tried to psychoanalyze him from his writings. Doesn't really work out that well. But if you read deeply, especially in his table talk, which can get kind of out there for some people, kind of worldly, earthy. But if you read some of his ways to cure a sorrowful heart and stuff, is get together friends and basically go to the bar, right? This is before you have modern medicine, psychology, counseling, those type of things. His idea was push yourself into it. A joyful heart is a good thing. It is a good medicine. You will find that the people who are the most joyful in life not only seem to be the most fulfilled, but you also seem to kind of shrug off illness. Eventually we all get sick, I get it, but they just seem to kind of go their way. So what's your joy today? Keep going down. The wicked accepts a bribe in secret to pervert the way of justice. Pretty self-explanatory. The discerning set his face towards wisdom, but the eyes of a fool are on the ends of the earth. A foolish son is a grief to his father, and bitterness to her who bore him. To impose a fine on a righteous man is not good, nor to strike the noble for their uprightness. Whoever restrains his words has knowledge, and he who has a cool spirit is a man of understanding. I'm going to take that verse and this next verse real quick. Even a fool who keeps silent is considered wise. When he closes his lips, he is deemed intelligent. Okay. On a kind of side note here, I think we all understand this, and we've seen this in our world today. Regardless, and this is, again, I'm more for joy, I'm more for just opening our eyes and seeing everything for as it is than anything else. Regardless of which side of the political aisle you sit on, there are times when even your favorite politicians open their mouth and you say, oh, please shut up, right? It's going to happen. We saw this Again, regardless of how anybody sits, but having conversations with so many of you, people who supported President Trump, just, oh, he was great if he would just not tweet every 5 seconds. Verse 28, right? Or even now with our current president, Joe Biden, he stumbles, he says something wrong, and people say, oh, I like him. I just, please don't talk anymore, right? We get this. We understand this fundamentally. Usually speaking, and this is why you shouldn't look to me, look around the room, especially when there's like a hot debated topic or something. Look at the person who is sitting quietly and sitting watching, like intently, not the guy who's sitting there playing on his phone or something like that, but the person who's sitting there taking it all in. That person's thinking. That person, especially if they're very slow to speak, usually has a little bit of wisdom. Am I right? I mean, think about times where maybe it was a town hall meeting, a church meeting, a political rally, who knows? Look to see who's actually thinking. That's usually somebody that has something to say. They might not say anything, but they usually do, okay? So something to think about. Instead of opening mouth, inserting foot, sometimes just keep the mouth closed, right? The other thing, so, and I think I mentioned this, a tactic, something that you can use in life to help yourself, especially since I am personally one who likes to speak rapidly and fast. Not just actually fast, as you know, but also somebody who just likes to kind of jump in and talk and then has to kind of talk through what they're talking about. When you're presented with a problem and you just want to say something, try something different this time. Count backwards from 10 until you get to 0. And then try it again. Try to keep yourself calm and quiet to respond, especially when you're talking with somebody who's really on fire and wanting to get something out. If they're angry, maybe they're just really excited, doesn't matter. Give yourself time to hear and think. Again, this is where I'm not great at this. This is not my skill, okay? But take the time to count backwards and let the person be done speaking verbally, but also with their body. That's right. I mentioned this with our series on marriage, that when somebody's angry and they spouted off all that they want to, but they're still sitting there fuming and looking, wait until their body language is done, when they're done speaking, even with that. First of all, it invites a very awkward silence, which is difficult for anybody to deal with. So they're going to get out everything. Second of all, it's going to give you time to think. And the last thing that I have found, at least when I have done this, when people have been angry, whether it's with me or the church or something of this nature, they really don't like it. They want you to be as brash as they are, which normally invites more trouble. Going back to the verse here, the beginning of strife is like letting out water, so quit before the quarrel breaks out. Wait for it to simmer down, right? And then speak. Again, where I've done this before in life, usually it makes the person a lot more angry and it makes them think that they're winning and the like, until they realize that all they're doing is yelling and being angry and all those things. And then, eventually they usually start to reflect back on it. Sometimes they come back and apologize for it later, or at least begin the conversation in a different way, but they really don't like the silence. Something to think about. Okay. There is chapter 17, whole rundown. I know we went longer than we normally do on the Proverbs, but it's just a good chapter to go through. A lot of fun, a lot of wisdom, a little bit of funny on the side, and just things to reflect on. Just simple, God's honest truth for our life, right? All right, guys, if you have prayer requests or anything, go ahead and please put that down in the comment section below. And I don't have any additions to our prayers that I'm aware of. Of course, I didn't really look. I had a lot of emails this morning. I didn't really look through them very closely. Okay. I don't see any right now that have, there's a lot written in that one. Hope if you have a prayer request and it's in a long email, I might not see it until I really read through the email. So I do apologize for that, and I will add them as soon as I find it. Long emails are fine. Just realize it takes me time to process, right? Okay. So let's see. Today, my wife is on her way back from her trip, so she will be back sometime today, I hope. So I will be around the office and the house today, kind of getting things done. Yesterday I planned out all services for Trinity and Concordia through the summer, so from June to the end of August. And that was actually really helpful to just sit back and look at what everything's going on. And one of the things I'm challenging myself to do, and hopefully inviting you all in on the conversation as well, is I'm going to preach through the epistle lessons this summer, pretty much exclusively, unless something really comes up and I need to redirect. Sometimes that happens. But I'm kind of challenging myself to do a little something different, to start asking the real deep questions of the faith and using our readings to help direct our thoughts this summer. So we're going to see how that goes. We're going to be starting off with 2 Corinthians. We have several epistle lessons from 2 Corinthians here. And then we'll basically be going through the book of Ephesians for our sermons this summer. So something interesting, something to think about. All right, not seeing any prayer requests or anything come in. Let's go ahead and take a moment to close with a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, we give thanks to you for your wisdom, that although we don't always see it, especially when we are in the midst of deep emotions, you would still reach out to teach us and guide us. Help us remember to be slow to speak and quick to hear, as we learn to deal with our brothers and sisters, especially our brothers and sisters in Christ, with grace and mercy. Father, this day we ask that you continue to be with those who are in need of our prayers, that you be with Sylvia and Tim, Jody and Craig. Be with the men and women of our police forces and armed forces. Be with Kurt and Corey and Roger and Tyler. Keep them safe no matter where they might be this day. And continue to help their families deal with worry and anxiety in a God-pleasing way into the praise and glory of your name, that we will rejoice together for all your blessings that you richly bestow on us in this earthly life. In Jesus' holy name we pray. Amen. All right, everyone, have a blessed day. If you need me, as always, send me a text, send me a message, something like that. But we'll get back to you as soon as we can. We'll see you tomorrow morning at 9.